Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder and deliver an episode to you while I walk home from the train. I'm Brendan Riley. Greetings, listener. I hope this podcast finds you well. It is a lovely Thursday morning, and I am walking home from dropping my children off at school. I found this is one of my favorite times to record, even though it tends to be a little busier on the traffic angle. But the change in delivering in the morning rather than the afternoon, I think gives me a little bit different perspective of the day. I wanted to talk to you today about teaching people how to play games. Well, okay, I don't mean teaching people, I mean introducing games to people. Let me give you some context. My school is having a silent auction for students for the Student Scholarship Fund. And the silent auction is driven from faculty and staff contributions of things to buy. And I am not a physical artist who would donate things that are really all that fun to buy. So the other option you could do is to offer unique experiences. So I decided to offer a game night. The way I'm going to paraphrase my post for you here, if I were a good and prepared podcaster, I would have a copy of what I emailed in ready. But essentially it says, guided game night. The hobby board gaming community has exploded in the last decade. Games have moved far beyond the board games that you played as a child. Celebrity gamers like Will Wheaton on tabletop, or Kristen Bell, or Rich Sommer have helped to push this burgeoning field into the mainstream. Do you find yourself wondering what the hubbub is all about? English professor and board game hobbyist Brendan Riley will provide you with an evening's entertainment to help show you some of the delights of the new board game hobby. And so I think I also put in the phrase board game sommelier at some point, which a sommelier is the guy at the restaurant who helps pick out the wine to go with your meal. I heard that on a podcast somewhere with somebody who works at a board game cafe, that I think they're the games expert, but they said they think of themselves as a board game sommelier. So my idea for this experience was either they could sell it as individual tickets for like 3 to 6 people to come to a game night and they don't know each other. Or my preference would be to have it be an event where we have one group, one person buy it, and they have 3 to 6 of their friends, or 3 to 5 of their friends, I guess. I'm thinking it'll be a group of 3 to 6 gamers get together, and then I would come and bring some games, teach them some games, and help them play the games. So the approach that I'm going to take is what I want to talk to you about today, because while I have certainly been a board game hobbyist and a board game ambassador, I haven't really had a lot of practice doing stranger intros, starting with somebody who I don't really know very well and showing them board games. I thought today I would talk a little bit about the approach that I'm thinking of and the kinds of things I do when I know that I'm going to be playing games with people who haven't really played games much at all. Well, the first thing to gauge is what are people's experiences with board games? And this is really important. If you're starting to game with somebody and you really don't know much about their experience at all, the first thing to do is check is like, what kind of board games have you played before? And what kind of games do you enjoy? Now, a non-hobbyist will probably offer a variety of mass market games they've played. Maybe they'll say they haven't played anything in a while, or they've played some word games like Scrabble or something, but they haven't played any games recently. That's fine. That's a great place to start. The crucial thing, though, is that you kind of get a sense of, do they play games regularly? Are they used to party games? If they've only played mass market games, do they still play them, or was it something they played when they were younger? So that's one element. But the other part of why I like to ask what kind of games do you play is that there will be some people who it turns out are hobby board gamers. Either they actually are into the hobby the way I am, and presumably you are if you're listening to this podcast. But there might be other people who have kind of stumbled into it. They've picked up a game here or there. Maybe once in a while they'll wander into a game shop and buy something. They don't follow the media, but they've played, Betrayal at House on the Hill or Pandemic or any of these sort of lighter entryway games. And they might be primed for something a little bit more complex. Or it might turn out that they actually are a gamer. I mean, one of the dangers, and this is a danger that all people face, one of the dangers you have when you're meeting somebody new, if you don't know where they are already in the board game hobby, is to assume that they don't know anything about it. But in fact, they might. And, that's just as bad as assuming that somebody does know something when they don't. Is assuming that they aren't part of the hobby for whatever reason you're approaching it. But okay, so say you do a survey, and I'm gonna presume that the people who buy my curated game night thing are probably not hobby gamers. They might have played a game of something more complex than a mass market game at some point. They might have played a Betrayal at House on the Hill or a Pandemic. They maybe have played Exploding Kittens or Cards Against Humanity. I don't even think Cards Against Humanity is a hobby board game at this point. It's so ubiquitous that everybody knows it, or most younger people know it, and the idea that you wouldn't have played it is, beside the point. So that's kind of where it started. What's their experience with games? Then the next thing I would want to explore is what kinds of things do they like outside of games? Are they into sports? Are they into movies or TV or reading? What kinds of things do they like in movie or TV or reading? Another thing to find out is what kind of media do they enjoy? Do they read? Do they watch movies? Do they read comic books? What themes do they prefer in those genres? Because there are a lot of different games that kind of do similar things, but different games will allow for different experiences. And if you can get a theme that's going to intrigue them, then that experience can be both easier to learn and more fun. So trying to figure out, after you know their gaming history, what kinds of things do they like? What kinds of themes would you be able to bring that would be intriguing to them? The next thing to think about is what kinds of experiences you would like to get them to have. So as I'm thinking about this in terms of being a board game sommelier, I'm interested in bringing games that allow for a variety of different experiences, a couple different kinds of things that they can try out and enjoy. In particular, I'm looking at a couple things. I'm thinking about it would be fun to get a co-op game that they could try and enjoy. It would be fun to get a party game that they haven't played that they could try and enjoy. And then ideally one a little bit light game, but one a little bit longer game that's going to be something where they haven't experienced this kind of game before, but is pretty fun. So that would be kind of my starting point, is to think about what are 2 or 3, ideally 3, maybe even 4 experiences they can have to spend a long day at games. The other thing to think about, assuming that your game playing folk are pretty new to the hobby, is you really want to only play a game that's got like one mechanism they have to worry about. One thing that they haven't done before that they should do now. And the reason for this is that you don't want to overwhelm them. The new gamers, the fastest way to turn them off is to sit them down and try to get them to play a game that's too complicated for their level or for their taste. So a key part of it is going to be to pick what for hobby gamers are probably very light games. But you also want to pick things they won't have played before. A crucial part of it, if you're going to be the board game sommelier, if you're the sommelier at a restaurant and you suggest the same wine they would have ordered anyway, to them it's like, well, what good are you? What they want is the niche advice. They want the perfect pairing. And so that'll be the goal if anyone buys this thing. My wife's like, is it going to hurt your feelings if nobody buys it? And I said, no, it won't. It probably will, honestly, a little bit, but it won't surprise me much. Anyway, so part of it's going to be trying to become the sommelier for the group, figure out what's going to work best with the group. So on the day of the event, so I've got a couple things to do. Once I talk to the host of the event, or the purchaser, and figure out which games I'm going to bring, So my goal is to learn to play these games perfectly, to be able to teach them very well, and then I won't actually play the game myself, but rather be off to the side, kind of like a docent, right? Somebody in a museum who answers questions and helps you figure out what you're saying or what's happening in the game. The other things to watch out for, I'm really interested to think about how do I talk about etiquette a little bit, basically saying put your phone away and stay in the moment at the table, because that's how the best games will grow. But watch out for people who are disinterested or spoil sports. I would hope nobody who's coming to a game night is going to be disinterested, but you really want to keep an eye out for people who are, through their attitude, going to change the game or bring it down. I don't know how you can fix that, especially in the situation I'll be in, but it's something to watch out for anyway. So I think that here's a couple ideas for games that I've been pondering. Mysterium would be a nice big game to play, although that's maybe too long. We could also play Ticket to Ride or Pandemic. Those are both pretty accessible, even for people who haven't played hobby games before. I think Kingdom Builder might also be one that would fit at that level and be reasonably abstract. And then there's Catan. If they haven't played Catan, that's a great one to teach people, because it's got trading and a couple other things. For the lighter games, I was thinking Sushi Go would be a nice one. I was also thinking about Happy Salmon is just a lovely game, although if I don't know these people very well, Happy Salmon's a weird game to try to get adults to play. So I don't know how well that one would go over. If it turns out that they've played a little bit more, I think I'll probably bring Clank, which admittedly takes a bit more work to learn, but is really delightful. Or Ladies and Gentlemen is another game that just as an experience is so weird that it's kind of fun. And then finally, we recently got Sonar, which is a sort of lighter version of Captain Sonar. And I want to try that out this weekend because I think it has the potential to really be a good fit for this kind of event. And then a party game, something like Codenames is always good. Or the game of Things, if the group knows each other really well, that's a fun one. I probably will stay away from the judge games though, so the game of Things isn't my favorite. If nothing else, because they've played games like that. So I'm not sure what it would do. I'm interested to see what you think or hear what you have to say. I won't have to do this until April, late April or early May. So I have some time to make my plans, but I'm curious, what do you think I should do, or what would you do to prepare to be a board game sommelier? Hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Rattlebox Games. Email me, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or the best way to get hold of me is on Board Game Geek. My username is Wombat929. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening. It's a lovely day here in Chicago, so I hope that your walk that you take soon is as pleasant as mine was. Have a good day. Bye-bye. My plan is not to play any of the games, but rather act as a kind of a guide, right? What's the word? Somebody at a museum. What's the word for somebody at a museum? I've lost it. Anyway, to be like the person at the museum who can answer. A docent. There we go. All right.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.